The kitchen was quiet except for the soft hum of the dishwasher when Emma stormed in, waving an envelope like a victory flag. Her eyes gleamed with a cruel satisfaction I'd never seen in my 17-year-old daughter before. "Look what I got," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. She slapped the envelope onto the counter between us. "DNA results. Want to explain why Dad isn't showing up as my biological father?" My hands stilled over the sink where I'd been washing dishes. I carefully dried them on a kitchen towel, buying myself precious seconds to steady my racing heart. I'd known this day might come, but I hadn't expected it like this, hadn't expected the look of smug triumph on my daughter's face. "How long have you been lying to us?" Emma demanded, crossing her arms. "Does Dad even know, or have you been playing him for a fool all these years too?" I took a deep breath, studying her face, the face that looked so much like mine at her age, yet held none of the warmth or understanding I desperately needed from her right now. "Sit down, Emma," I said quietly. "This isn't a conversation we should have standing up." She scoffed but dropped into one of the kitchen chairs, still radiating righteous anger. "Fine. Explain how you've been living a lie for the past 17 years. This should be good. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and my daughter had just unknowingly opened a door to the past I'd spent nearly 2 decades trying to keep firmly shut. Not because I was ashamed, but because some truths are too heavy for children to bear. Some stories need to wait until the right moment, and this wasn't it. But Emma had forced my hand. I sat down across from her, folding my hands on the table. "First, I need you to understand something. Everything I've done, every choice I've made, has been to protect you and give you the best life possible." Emma rolled her eyes. Save the mom speech. "I want the truth." "The truth," I said carefully, "is complicated. And before we go any further, I need to know exactly what you're hoping to accomplish here. Are you looking for answers, or are you just trying to hurt me?" She faltered for a moment, her confidence wavering. "I deserve to know who my real father is," she said finally, but her voice had lost some of its edge. I nodded slowly. "Yes, you do. But not like this. Not as a weapon you can use to try to tear this family apart." "Family?" She laughed bitterly. "What family? It's all built on lies." "No," I said firmly. "It's built on love. Your father, the man who raised you, who has loved you every single day of your life. He knows you're not biologically his. He's always known." Emma's eyes widened, her carefully constructed narrative beginning to crack. "What? David and I met when I was already pregnant with you," I explained, watching her face carefully. "I was 22, scared, and alone. He didn't have to stay. He didn't have to love us. But he chose to, every single day." "But," Emma's voice trembled. "But why didn't you tell me?" I reached across the table, grateful when she didn't pull away from my touch. "Because some stories need time. Because you needed to be old enough to understand that family isn't just about DNA. It's about choice. It's about love." "Then who is my biological father?" she asked, her voice smaller now. I closed my eyes briefly, memories washing over me. His name was Michael. And that story, that's the part I've been trying to protect you from. "I want to know," Emma insisted, but the smugness was gone, replaced by something more vulnerable. "I need to know." I took another deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation I'd hoped to have years from now, when she was older, when she could better understand the complexities of love and loss and the choices we make when we're young. "I met Michael when I was in college." I began, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "He was charming, ambitious, and I thought I was in love. We dated for nearly a year before I got pregnant." Emma leaned forward, hanging on every word. "What happened?" "When I told him about the pregnancy, I paused, choosing my words carefully. "He made it clear he wasn't ready for that responsibility. He had plans. Law school, a career, a future that didn't include a baby. He told me to take care of it, and when I refused, he disappeared." "Just like that?" Emma whispered. I nodded. "Just like that. I tried to contact him a few times, but he blocked my number, changed his email. His parents, your biological grandparents, they told me to stay away, offered me money to keep quiet about the whole thing." "Did you take it?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. "No," I said firmly. "I didn't want their money. I wanted to give you a life filled with love, not secrets and shame. I dropped out of college, moved back home with my parents, and started working 2 jobs to prepare for your arrival." I watched as Emma processed this information, her earlier bravado completely gone. But then how did you meet Dad? I mean, David? A small smile crossed my face at the memory. I was working at a coffee shop, 7 months pregnant and exhausted. David was a regular customer, always kind, always left a good tip. One day, I was so tired I nearly fainted while taking his order. He helped me sit down, brought me water, and stayed with me until my shift ended. And he didn't care that you were pregnant with someone else's baby. He said it was like getting two miracles for the price of one. I replied, feeling tears prick at my eyes. He started coming by more often, always checking on me, bringing me healthy snacks because he'd read somewhere that pregnant women needed extra nutrients. Emma's lip trembled. He really chose us. He did. I confirmed. We got married when you were 6 months old. He insisted on legally adopting you, said he wanted the world to know you were his daughter in every way that mattered. That's why his name is on your birth certificate, because he chose to be your father. The kitchen fell silent as Emma absorbed this information. I could see the conflict on her face, the way her earlier certainty had crumbled in the face of a truth far more complex than she'd imagined. I'm sorry, she finally whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought I was exposing some terrible secret. I wanted to hurt you because I've been so angry lately, and I didn't even know why. I moved around the table to pull her into my arms, feeling her body shake with sobs. You're 17, sweetheart. Being angry is part of growing up. But next time, talk to me. Ask me. Don't try to weaponize our history. She nodded against my shoulder. Is he going to be mad about the DNA test? No, I said softly, stroking her hair. He's always known this day would come eventually. We both did. We just hoped you'd come to us first, that we could tell you the story together, when you were ready to hear it. I want to hear it, Emma said, pulling back to wipe her eyes. All of it, and I want Dad here too. I smiled, reaching for my phone. I'll call him, but Emma? She looked up at me. Remember this feeling. Remember how different the truth was from what you imagined. Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about other people's choices, they're not nearly as simple as we think. As I dialed David's number, I watched Emma sink back into her chair, the DNA results forgotten on the counter. She looked younger suddenly, more vulnerable, like the little girl who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms. David answered on the second ring. Hey, love. Everything okay? Emma took a DNA test, I said simply. It's time for that conversation we've been preparing for. There was a pause, then his warm, steady voice came through the line. I'll be home in 20 minutes. We'll do this together, like we've done everything else. I hung up and looked at Emma, who was watching me with red-rimmed eyes. He's on his way, I told her. Are you ready to hear the whole story? She nodded, and I could see the change in her. The way her earlier defiance had transformed into something softer, more open. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I am. David arrived exactly 20 minutes later, his footsteps echoing through the house as he entered. I watched Emma tense slightly at the sound, her earlier confidence completely dissolved. When he appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his work clothes, his eyes immediately found Emma. Hey, sweetheart, he said softly, setting his briefcase down. Your mom filled me in. Emma's lip trembled. Dad, But before she could finish, David crossed the room and pulled her into a tight hug. It's okay, he murmured into her hair. We've been waiting for this day. I just wish you felt you could come to us first. I watched them embrace, my heart swelling with love for this man who had chosen us, who had never once made Emma feel like she was anything less than his whole world. When they finally pulled apart, David kept one arm around Emma's shoulders as he sat down beside her. So, he said, looking between us. Where should we start? Mom told me about meeting you, Emma said quietly, about how you chose us. David smiled, his eyes meeting mine across the table. Best decision I ever made. But there's more to the story, isn't there, Sarah? I nodded, knowing we had to tell her everything now. No more protecting her from the harder truths. Yes, Emma needs to know about what happened after, about Michael's attempts to come back. Emma's head snapped up. What? He tried to come back? When? I took a deep breath, feeling David's steady presence giving me strength. When you were 5 years old, Michael showed up at our door. He'd seen a photo of you at his parents' house. They'd been keeping tabs on us through mutual friends. Though I didn't know it at the time. What did he want? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He said he'd made a mistake. I continued, the memory still sharp after all these years. He'd finished law school, started a successful career, gotten married. But something was missing. He said he couldn't stop thinking about the daughter he'd abandoned. David's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. Tell her what you told him, Sarah. I reached across the table to take Emma's hand. I told him he'd lost the right to be your father the day he walked away. That being a parent isn't something you can decide to do only when it's convenient. Your dad, David, he'd been there for every moment, every skinned knee, every nightmare, every triumph. He was your father in every way that mattered. Did Michael fight you on it? Emma asked. He threatened to take us to court, David answered, his voice steady. Said he had resources now, could prove he was the biological father and demand partial custody. Emma's eyes widened. What did you do? We fought back, I said simply. We had years of documented abandonment, proof that he'd rejected any responsibility when I was pregnant. Plus, David had legally adopted you. The law was on our side. But more importantly, David added, squeezing Emma's shoulder, you were old enough to be affected by any custody battle. We weren't going to put you through that trauma just because Michael suddenly decided he was ready to play dad. He backed off eventually, I continued. I think he realized that pursuing it would only hurt everyone involved, especially you. But he did make one request. What was it? Emma asked. He asked that when you were old enough to understand, we tell you the truth. Tell you that he regretted his choices, that he'd grown up and realized what he'd thrown away. I paused, studying my daughter's face. We agreed, but on our terms, when we felt you were ready. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing everything. Do you know where he is now? David and I exchanged a look. Yes, I said carefully. He's still in the area, actually. He has his own law firm downtown. 2 other children with his wife. My half-siblings, Emma whispered, testing the words. Biologically, yes, David said gently. But Emma, you need to understand something. Just because you share DNA with someone doesn't mean they have a right to be in your life. That's your choice to make, when and if you're ready. Emma looked up at him, tears in her eyes. But you'll always be my real dad, right? No matter what. David pulled her close again, his own eyes glistening. Always, sweetheart. Nothing could ever change that. I watched them together, remembering all the moments that had led us here. The day David had first held Emma, his eyes full of wonder. Her first steps, taken toward him with complete trust. The father-daughter dances, the bedtime stories, the countless small moments that had built their unshakable bond. I feel so stupid, Emma said finally, wiping her eyes. I thought I was going to expose this huge scandal, but instead you learned that family is more complicated and beautiful than just biology. I finished for her. That love is a choice we make every day. The DNA test, David added, it doesn't change who we are. It doesn't erase our history or diminish our love for you. If anything, it just confirms what I've always known, that choosing to be your father was the greatest gift of my life. Emma reached for the envelope still sitting on the counter, picking it up with trembling fingers. Can we throw this away? I don't need it anymore. I smiled, feeling tears prick at my eyes. Of course, sweetheart. We watched as she tore the envelope in half, then quarters, letting the pieces fall into the trash. As she did, I saw something shift in her expression, a kind of peace settling over her features. Mom, she said softly. Dad, I'm sorry. For trying to hurt you, for not trusting you enough to just ask. We understand, I assured her. Growing up means questioning things, trying to figure out who you are. But next time you have questions about your past, come to us first. We've never wanted to hide anything from you, we just wanted to protect you until you were ready for the whole truth. David nodded in agreement. And now that everything's out in the open, we can talk about what you want to do next. If you have questions about Michael, about your biological heritage, we'll help you find those answers when you're ready. Emma shook her head. I don't think I want to know right now. Maybe someday, but she looked between us, her expression softening. Right now, I just want to be here, with my real family. The three of us sat there in the kitchen as the evening light filtered through the windows, our family stronger for having weathered this storm together. Emma's DNA test, meant to be a weapon, had instead become a bridge to understanding, a reminder that the bonds that matter most aren't the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose to nurture and protect. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, David and I sat on the back porch, his arm around my shoulders as we looked up at the stars. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, leaning into his warmth. "Better than okay. I think this needed to happen. Maybe not exactly the way it did, but Emma needed to know the truth. She's stronger than we give her credit for," David mused. "Just like her mother." I turned to look at him, this man who had stepped into our lives and chosen to make us his family. "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything. For loving us both so completely." He smiled, pulling me closer. "Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your heart and with Emma's." Inside, we could hear Emma moving around in her room, probably getting ready for bed. The sound was so familiar, so precious, a reminder of all the ordinary moments that made up our extraordinary love story. "Do you think she'll want to meet him someday?" I asked quietly. "Michael?" David was quiet for a moment, considering. "Maybe, and if she does, we'll support her. But I think today showed her something important, that the truth isn't always what we expect it to be, and sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over me. The secret I'd carried for so long wasn't a secret anymore. And somehow, that made everything clear. Our family wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was built on choice, on love, on the daily decision to be there for each other. Emma's DNA test, meant to break us apart, had only brought us closer together. It had shown her, and reminded us, that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stay, who choose to love us through every storm, who build a life with us one moment at a time. As David and I sat there under the stars, I thought about all the paths that had led us here. Every choice, every struggle, every moment of doubt and faith. And I knew with absolute certainty that we had created something beautiful, a family bound not by DNA, but by something far stronger. The power of unconditional love. I never wanted to be part of the prestigious Blackwood medical dynasty. But life has a funny way of bringing you exactly where you need to be, even if the path there breaks your heart first. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the smallest clinics can save the biggest hospitals. The morning everything began, I was elbow deep in medical supplies at my rural clinic in Cedar Grove, sorting donations and trying to make our limited resources stretch another month. My phone buzzed for the 10th time, another message from my stepsister Victoria. "Dad's retirement ceremony is tonight. Last chance to stop embarrassing the family and show up properly dressed." Though honestly, working at that pathetic clinic, can you even afford proper clothes? I ignored it, just like I'd ignored the previous 9 messages. The Blackwood Medical Center's grand ballroom would be filled with the elite of the medical world tonight, celebrating my stepfather Richard's 30 years as CEO of the largest private hospital chain in the Northeast. My absence would be noted, discussed, and ultimately used as further proof of my unworthiness to carry the Blackwood name. My nurse, Maria, peeked her head in. "Dr. Chen, the Williams family is here early for Tommy's checkup. And you've got that thing tonight, right? The fancy hospital thing." I smiled, pulling off my gloves. "The only thing I have tonight is dinner with Mrs. Rodriguez to discuss her diabetes management plan. The fancy hospital thing isn't for country doctors like us." Maria frowned. "You know, for someone who graduated top of her class from Harvard Medical School, you sure let them treat you like you failed." "I didn't fail, Maria. I chose this." And I had. 5 years ago, I'd walked away from a guaranteed position as chief of surgery at Blackwood Memorial, my stepfather's flagship hospital, to open this clinic in an underserved rural community. To my stepfamily, it was the ultimate betrayal. The memories of that day still stung. I'd stood in Richard's opulent office, my fellowship completion certificate in hand, ready to explain my decision to serve where I was truly needed. A rural clinic. My stepmother Elizabeth's voice had dripped with disdain. "Darling, we didn't pay for Harvard to waste your talent on farmers and factory workers. You're a Blackwood now, start acting like one." "I'm a doctor first," I'd replied. "These people have no access to quality healthcare. They're dying from treatable conditions because." Because they're not our concern, Richard interrupted, his voice cold. This family has a legacy to maintain. Your mother understood that before she passed. It's time you did too. My mother, Dr. Grace Chen, had been Richard's first wife and the true medical genius of the family, though they'd written her out of the hospital's history after her death. She taught me that being a doctor meant serving those in need, not just those who could afford platinum insurance packages. Victoria, my stepsister and Richard's daughter from his first marriage, had twisted the knife further. If you do this, you're no longer welcome at Blackwood Memorial. We can't have our patients knowing that one of our own chose to work in some backwater dump. I'd walked out that day and never looked back. Well, almost never. I still kept tabs on the hospital chain through medical journals and industry news. Lately, the reports hadn't been good. Declining patient satisfaction, rising mortality rates, and whispers of financial troubles. A commotion outside my office snapped me back to the present. Dr. Chen. Maria called urgently. Emergency in the waiting room. I rushed out to find Mr. Thompson, one of our elderly regulars, collapsed on the floor. Heart attack, I diagnosed quickly, dropping to my knees beside him. Maria, crash cart. The next hour was a blur of CPR, medication, and desperate prayers until finally his heart stabilized. As we waited for the ambulance to transfer him to the nearest hospital, ironically, a Blackwood facility an hour away, his wife clutched my hand. If you weren't here, if this clinic didn't exist, she couldn't finish the sentence. But we are here, I assured her, even as I worried about our dwindling supplies and tight budget. The clinic operated on a shoestring, serving a community that could barely afford basic care, let alone the premium rates my stepfather's hospitals charged. That evening, as I sat with Mrs. Rodriguez reviewing her blood sugar logs, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my old friend Dr. James Wong, now Chief of Medicine at Blackwood Memorial. Sarah, you need to know what's happening, his message read. The retirement ceremony, it's not what everyone thinks. Things are worse than anyone realizes. Call me when you can. I was about to respond when another message came through, this one from an unknown number. Dr. Chen, my name is Marcus Kane from Horizon Healthcare Solutions. We've been following your work in rural healthcare innovation. Would you be interested in discussing a potential partnership? Our board is very interested in your model of sustainable community medicine. I stared at my phone, a plan slowly forming in my mind. I've been so focused on keeping my little clinic afloat that I'd missed the bigger picture. Maybe it was time to show the Blackwoods that true medical excellence isn't measured in marble lobbies and golden nameplates. Maria, I called out. Cancel my appointments for tomorrow. I need to go into the city. The retirement ceremony? She asked hopefully. No, I smiled, thinking of the Horizon Healthcare message. Something much more important. It's time to expand our little clinic's mission. As I drove home that night, past the farms and factories my stepfamily looked down on, I thought about my mother's last words to me. Sarah, healing isn't just about fixing bodies. Sometimes you have to heal entire systems. I hadn't understood what she meant back then, but I was about to find out. Little did I know, walking into Horizon Healthcare's offices the next morning would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the Blackwood medical empire to its foundations. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others built, it's building something better right next door. The Horizon Healthcare offices couldn't have been more different from the ostentatious Blackwood headquarters. Clean, modern, and efficient, without a crystal chandelier in sight. Marcus Kane, their CEO, met me in a simple conference room, his enthusiasm evident. Dr. Chen, thank you for coming. Your rural healthcare model is exactly what we've been looking for. He spread out a series of reports. Your clinic's outcomes are remarkable. Better patient compliance, lower readmission rates, and significantly reduced care costs. And you've done it all on a shoestring budget. I studied the data they compiled. We focus on prevention and community engagement. It's not revolutionary, just exactly what the industry needs, Marcus interrupted. Which is why we want to fund your expansion. 100 clinics across 5 states using your model. Full administrative autonomy, state-of-the-art equipment, comprehensive staff training programs. My heart raced, and my existing clinic will become our flagship training center. Dr. Chen, we're prepared to commit $500 million to this initiative. We believe you can revolutionize rural healthcare delivery. As Marcus outlined the details, my phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from Victoria about last night's ceremony, each more gloating than the last. You missed quite a show, little sister. Dad announced me as the new CEO of Blackwood Medical. But don't worry, we'll still treat your little charity cases at full price, of course. Someone has to pay for my new beach house. I muted the notifications and focused on Marcus's proposal. By the time I left his office 3 hours later, I wasn't just the director of a small rural clinic anymore. I was the CEO of Horizon Community Health Network, with resources that would make Victoria's beach house look like a sandbox. But I hadn't even made it to my car when James called. Sarah, it's worse than we thought. Victoria's first act as CEO. She's cutting all charity care programs. And the board just approved a 40% rate increase across all hospitals. She can't do that. I protested. Those programs serve thousands of patients. The community relies. That's not all. James cut in, his voice dropping. Remember those experimental treatments your mother was developing before she died? The ones Richard claimed failed? My grip tightened on the phone. What about them? I found her original research files. Sarah, they didn't fail. They worked. Richard buried the results because they would have made treatment too affordable. He's been sitting on potentially life-saving protocols for 15 years. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My mother's last project, affordable treatment protocols for common but expensive procedures, had supposedly died with her. Richard had used her failure to push for increasingly expensive proprietary treatments instead. Send me everything, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. And James, get ready to update your resume. You're about to have a better offer. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity, while Victoria held press conferences announcing Blackwood Medical's bold new direction. I quietly built something far more powerful. Every doctor fed up with Blackwood's profit over patients model, every nurse tired of turning away sick children because their parents couldn't afford care. They came to us. James brought my mother's research, and our team of scientists quickly confirmed what I'd suspected. Her protocols weren't just viable, they were revolutionary. We began implementing them immediately across our growing network. Then came the day Victoria finally noticed what was happening. Her angry call caught me in the middle of opening our 10th new clinic. What the hell do you think you're doing? She screeched. Those doctors were under contract, and those treatment protocols were my mother's work. I cut in calmly. Which makes them my intellectual property, not Blackwood Medical's. Check the patent office. You little, she sputtered. Dad will destroy you for this. Really? How are your patient numbers looking, Victoria? Because ours are growing rather quickly. She hung up, but I knew this was just the beginning. Sure enough, by that evening, the attacks began. Suddenly, every minor incident at our clinics was being reported to regulatory boards. Anonymous sources questioned our methods in medical journals. Suppliers mysteriously began having trouble filling our orders. I was reviewing the latest batch of complaints when Maria rushed into my office, her face pale. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. They're turning patients away at Blackwood Memorial. The new policies, they're demanding full payment up front for emergency services. They can't do that, I said, already reaching for my phone. It's illegal. They're doing it anyway. There's a child in their ER right now with appendicitis. They won't operate without a $50,000 deposit. I stood up, grabbing my keys. Call our surgical team. Have them prep or two. I'm going to get that patient. Sarah, wait. Maria called after me. There's something else. The market reports just came in. Blackwood Medical's stock is crashing. Rumors about financial irregularities, massive debts hidden from shareholders. I paused at the door, remembering something else from that last conversation with my mother. She hadn't just been working on affordable treatments. She'd been investigating financial discrepancies in the hospital's books. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Richard's insistence on burying her research. The rushed remarriage less than a year after her accident. The missing files from her office. Maria, I said quietly, call Marcus Kane at Horizon. Tell him it's time to implement Phase 2. The next morning, as I scrubbed in for the appendectomy we'd rescued from Blackwood's ER, my phone lit up with urgent news alerts. BLFQOD Medical Stoke ALTD AMID FFR AD ALLGATI ones. Whistleblower, REVELs DCADs OFHINANCIAL MENA PULHCHAN FBI raids Blackwood HDQARTRs. But it was the last message from James that made my hands shake. Found your mother's actual autopsy report. Sarah, it wasn't an accident. Call me immediately. Standing there in my small but spotless operating room, watching my team prep for surgery, I realized this wasn't just about saving one hospital chain anymore. This was about justice, for my mother, for our patients, for everyone who believed healthcare should heal people, not bankrupt them. Victoria had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The day everything came to a head was unseasonably cold for spring. I sat in Marcus Kane's office, reviewing the final pieces of evidence James had compiled. My mother's original autopsy report lay on the desk between us, along with 15 years of falsified financial records and the complete paper trail of her suppressed research. The FBI has enough to press charges, Marcus confirmed, his expression grim. Richard Blackwood didn't just kill your mother's research. The evidence suggests he orchestrated her accident after she threatened to expose the fraud. My hands remained steady as I closed the file. Years of surgical training had taught me to control my emotions, even when my world was shattering. And the hospital chain? Trading's been suspended. Their stock is worthless. They violated so many regulations that their hospital licenses could be revoked within days. He hesitated. Sarah, they're going to lose everything. Not everything, I corrected quietly, not the hospitals themselves. The patients and staff shouldn't suffer for Richard's crimes. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You have a plan. Horizon Healthcare Solutions does. I stood smoothing my lab coat. I believe it's time for that board meeting. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Victoria calling for the 20th time today. This time I answered. You vindictive little snake, she shrieked. What did you do? Nothing you didn't bring on yourselves, I replied calmly. How's the beach house, Victoria? This isn't a joke. The FBI is here. They're claiming Dad killed Grace. Your precious mother wasn't murdered, she was weak. Just like you. Something in me snapped. Then you won't mind meeting me at Blackwood Memorial in 1 hour. Bring Richard and Elizabeth. Let's discuss weakness. I arrived early, watching the families entering the hospital's grand lobby. How many had been bankrupted by Victoria's policies? How many had lost loved ones because they couldn't afford Richard's inflated prices? Right on schedule, the Blackwood entourage burst through the doors. Richard looked considerably less polished than usual, his designer suit wrinkled, his face ashen. Elizabeth clutched her Hermes bag like a shield. Victoria's perfect blowout had been replaced by a disheveled mess. Here to gloat? Richard spat, but I could hear the fear beneath his anger. No, I replied, gesturing to the conference room where the hospital board awaited. I'm here to give you a choice. Inside, Marcus Kane sat with James and a team of FBI agents. On the screen behind them, video testimony played silently. Former employees, buried evidence, the full scope of Richard's crimes laid bare. It's over, I said simply. The only question is how many people you want to drag down with you. Elizabeth stepped forward, her society mask cracking. What do you want? Money? Position? Name your price. I want the truth. About my mother. About what happened that night. Richard's face contorted. Your mother was going to destroy everything. Her affordable care protocols would have bankrupted us. When she found the irregularities in the books, she threatened to go public. I couldn't let that happen. So you had her killed, James finished, his voice hard. Tampered with her car, made it look like an accident. I built this empire, Richard shouted. Everything I did was to protect our legacy. No, I corrected. Everything you did was to protect your greed. And now you have a decision to make. I laid out 2 documents. Option 1, you fight the charges. We expose everything. The murder, the fraud, the patient deaths that resulted from your policies. Victoria and Elizabeth will be implicated as accessories after the fact. You'll all go to prison. Victoria's knees buckled. Elizabeth grabbed for a chair. Option 2, I continued. You sign control of Blackwood Medical over to Horizon Healthcare Solutions. We'll restructure, implement my mother's protocols, restore the charity care programs. You walk away with nothing, but Victoria and Elizabeth stay out of prison. You can't do this, Richard whispered, but his hands were shaking. I'm your father. No, I cut him off. You're the man who murdered my mother. The only father I had died with her. The next hour was a blur of signatures and legal documents. By sunset, Blackwood Medical Center had a new name: Grace Chen Memorial Hospital. Richard was led away in handcuffs, still ranting about legacy and ungrateful children. Elizabeth collapsed in tears, but it was Victoria who surprised me. I didn't know, she said quietly as she signed away her rights to the hospital chain. About Grace. About any of it. I was just so angry that you were his favorite. I stared at her. What? He talked about you constantly, how brilliant you were, just like your mother. Why do you think I fought so hard to prove myself? I was never good enough because I wasn't you. The irony almost made me laugh. All these years we'd both been fighting shadows, measuring ourselves against images that weren't real. 1 month later, I stood in the new pediatric wing of Grace Chen Memorial, watching families receive care regardless of their ability to pay. My mother's protocols had been implemented across our entire network, cutting treatment costs by 60% while improving outcomes. James joined me at the window. Your mother would be proud. She'd be proud of all of us, I corrected. This is what healthcare should be. Victoria's trial testimony had helped put Richard away for life. In an unexpected turn, she'd gone back to school, determined to become the doctor she pretended to be. Elizabeth had moved to Florida, her society friends deserting her as quickly as her wealth. As for me, I split my time between overseeing the hospital network and working shifts at my original rural clinic. After all, every great doctor needs to remember why they started. The press called it a revolution in healthcare. Industry journals studied our model. But for me, success wasn't measured in headlines or profit margins. It was measured in the faces of patients receiving care they could actually afford, in the satisfied exhaustion after a long surgery, and the knowledge that my mother's legacy lived on. Sometimes at night, I visit her memorial in the hospital garden. You were right, Mom, I whisper to the stars. Sometimes you have to heal entire systems. The Blackwood medical dynasty had fallen, but something better had risen in its place. Not an empire built on greed and fear, but a network of healing built on compassion and innovation. After all, that's what real doctors do. We heal. We serve. We remember our oaths. And sometimes, when the healing is done right, justice follows naturally. Maria still teases me about keeping my old office at the rural clinic, even though I could have the fanciest suite in any of our hospitals. But she understands. That small room where it all started reminds me of an important truth. It's not the size of the hospital that matters, but the size of the doctor's heart. Richard's legacy now molders in a prison cell, while my mother's vision transforms lives daily. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others built, it's building something so much better that people forget the old version ever existed. That's my legacy. That's my mother's victory. And that's a story worth telling. I stared at the letter from the medical board, my hands trembling as I read the words that could end my career. Due to multiple complaints of medical negligence and professional misconduct, your medical license has been suspended pending investigation. My name is Dr. Emma Richardson, and at 34, I was watching my life's work crumble thanks to the one person who should have had my back, my sister Victoria. Ready to give up yet? Victoria's text flashed on my phone. You should have just sold your share of the practice when I asked. The Richardson Medical Group had been our father's legacy, a network of prestigious private clinics across Boston that he built from nothing. When he died 6 months ago, he left the business equally to Victoria and me. I got the medical side, she got the administrative control. It should have worked perfectly. But Victoria had other plans. Dr. Richardson, my nurse Sarah, appeared in my office doorway, her face pale. 3 more patients just canceled their appointments. They said they received letters about malpractice claims against you. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. This had been happening for weeks, a steady stream of complaints filed with the medical board, all carefully crafted to look legitimate. Patient records altered, prescription histories changed, lab results mysteriously modified, all pointing to dangerous negligence on my part. The board meeting is tomorrow. Sarah continued softly. Do you want me to call your lawyer? I shook my head. He dropped me yesterday. Apparently, someone informed his firm about my history of misconduct. Victoria had been thorough. With our family's fortune at her disposal, she orchestrated a campaign to destroy not just my career, but my entire reputation. all because I refused to sell her my share of the practice. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Victoria. Just imagine what Dad would think seeing his precious doctor daughter lose her license. Though I suppose he can't think much of anything now, can he? Something in her words made me pause. There had always been something off about our father's death. A sudden heart attack at 65, despite his perfect health. Victoria had handled all the arrangements, insisting on a quick cremation before I could request an autopsy. I opened my laptop, pulling up the file I'd been keeping on Victoria's activities. Behind her polished socialite exterior, my sister had been busy. Mysterious financial transactions, offshore accounts, meetings with people who specialized in making problems disappear. "Sarah," I called out, "remember that nurse who used to work with Dad? The one who quit right after he died?" "Maria?" "Yes, she moved to Florida, I think." I nodded, already pulling up Maria's contact information. She'd always been close to our father, and her sudden departure had seemed strange at the time. "Cancel my afternoon appointments," I said, reaching for my phone. "I need to make some calls." Victoria thought she had orchestrated the perfect takedown, using our family's money and influence to systematically destroy me. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how far I'd go to protect not just my career, but our father's true legacy. As I dialed Maria's number, I thought about something our father used to say. In medicine, the smallest detail can be the difference between life and death. Now, those details might just save my career and expose Victoria's darkest secret. The phone rang 3 times before Maria answered. Her voice was cautious, guarded. "Dr. Richardson, I've been expecting your call." "Maria," I said, my heart racing. "We need to talk about what happened the night my father died." There was a long pause, then a deep sigh. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, we do. But not over the phone. They might be listening." "They?" "Your sister's people. They've been watching me. Meet me tonight, 8 p.m., at the coffee shop on Berkeley Street. Come alone." As I hung up, another text from Victoria appeared. "The board meeting's at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Better start practicing your goodbye speech." I smiled grimly. Victoria thought she had all the power, all the control, but she'd forgotten something crucial about me. I hadn't become a doctor just because of our father's influence. I'd earned it through years of training, of learning to spot patterns, of never ignoring those small, vital details that others might miss. And now those skills might just help me uncover the truth that could save everything. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The coffee shop on Berkeley Street was nearly empty when I arrived at 8 p.m. Maria sat in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around an untouched cup of coffee. She'd aged since I'd last seen her, new lines of worry etched into her face. "They offered me $500,000 to leave Boston," she said without preamble. "Your sister's lawyers made it clear what would happen if I stayed." I slid into the booth across from her. "Tell me about the night Dad died." Maria glanced around nervously before pulling out an old phone. "I kept this, my old work phone. There's something you need to see." She pulled up a video and handed it to me. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m. on the night of my father's death. The footage was dark but clear enough. Victoria entering our father's office at the main clinic, carrying something in her hand. 20 minutes later she left. At 12:15 a.m., the emergency call about his heart attack was made. "I was working late that night," Maria whispered. "I saw her go in, but she didn't see me." The next morning, when they found him, she trailed off, her hands shaking. "Why didn't you come forward?" "Your sister had evidence, fabricated, but convincing, that I'd been stealing drugs from the clinic. She said she'd have me arrested, make sure I never worked in healthcare again. Then she offered me the money." My mind raced, connecting dots I'd been too blind to see before. The rushed cremation, the missing toxicology report, the way Victoria had insisted on handling all the paperwork herself. "There's more," Maria continued. "Your father was investigating something before he died. Discrepancies in the clinic's finances, large sums of money disappearing, then reappearing in offshore accounts." I pulled out my laptop, showing her the file I'd been building. "Like these transactions?" Her eyes widened. Yes, exactly. He was going to confront Victoria about it. He'd found proof she'd been embezzling millions from the practice for years. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A news alert. My heart stopped as I read the headline. "Prominent doctor faces multiple malpractice claims." Sources allege pattern of negligence. The press release went out an hour ago. Victoria's text followed. Sweet dreams, sis. I looked up at Maria. I need that video, and I need you to testify about what you saw. She hesitated. Victoria's people. I'll protect you, I promised. But we have to move fast. The medical board meets at 9 a.m. tomorrow. After Maria left, I spent hours in my home office, piecing everything together. The financial records, the video, the timeline of events leading to our father's death. With each new connection, the picture became clearer and more damning. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I hadn't seen in years, Detective James Chen, an old friend from college who now worked in Boston PD's Financial Crimes Unit. Emma, his voice was urgent. I got your email. The financial records you sent. This is serious. We've been investigating similar patterns at other medical practices. How soon can you come in? I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, already grabbing my coat. My phone buzzed again. Victoria, just saw you leaving your house. Late night errand? Don't bother trying to save yourself. It's over. I smiled, thinking of the GPS tracker she'd had planted on my car weeks ago. I'd left it there deliberately, letting her think she had the upper hand. What she didn't know was that I'd taken a lift to meet Maria, and now I was taking another to meet Detective Chen. Victoria might have inherited our father's business acumen, but I'd inherited his attention to detail and his determination to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The game was changing. Victoria thought she was ruining my career. Instead, she was about to learn that some patterns can't be hidden forever, especially from a doctor trained to look for symptoms of a deeper disease. By morning, Boston would know exactly what kind of sickness had been growing in the Richardson Medical Group, and who had really been responsible for our father's death. The medical board meeting room was packed at 8:55 a.m. I sat quietly in the front row, watching Victoria hold court near the board members, her perfectly manicured hands gesturing as she spoke in hushed, concerned tones about her troubled sister. She hadn't seen me come in, just like she hadn't seen Detective Chen and his team quietly entering through the back door. Dr. Richardson, the board chairman called out at precisely 9 a.m., we're here to discuss the serious allegations against you. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I stood straightening my white coat. Yes, I do, but first I think we should watch something. The projector hummed to life as I played Maria's video. The room fell silent as they watched Victoria enter our father's office that fatal night. Then I showed them the financial records, the altered patient files, the carefully documented trail of corruption and fraud that led directly to my sister. Dr. Jonathan Richardson didn't die of a heart attack, I said, my voice steady. He was murdered because he discovered his daughter Victoria had been embezzling millions from the practice. I have Maria Rodriguez here to testify to what she saw that night, and Detective Chen from Financial Crimes to confirm the extent of Victoria's fraud. Victoria's face had gone white. This is ridiculous, she sputtered. You can't possibly. Ms. Richardson, Detective Chen interrupted, stepping forward. We have a warrant for your arrest. The toxicology report you tried to bury, we found it, along with evidence of multiple offshore accounts and a pattern of financial fraud dating back 5 years. As the officers moved to arrest her, Victoria lunged toward me. You think you're so clever, she hissed. You have no idea what I've done to build this empire. No, Victoria, I said quietly. You have no idea what Dad and I built. Medicine isn't about empire. It's about healing, about trust, about doing what's right even when it's hard. I watched as they led her away, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. The board members sat in stunned silence. Dr. Richardson, the chairman finally said, in light of this evidence, all complaints against you are dismissed. Your license is fully reinstated, effective immediately. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Victoria's arrest made headlines across Boston. The truth about our father's death and her years of fraud became public knowledge. Former employees came forward with more evidence, more stories of her manipulation and threats. I threw myself into rebuilding the practice, restoring our father's legacy of compassionate, ethical healthcare. The patients returned, trust was rebuilt, and slowly, the Richardson Medical Group began to heal. 3 months later, I sat in my father's old office, my office now, reviewing patient files when Sarah knocked on the door. Dr. Richardson, The DA's office called. Victoria took a plea deal. 20 years for the fraud charges, with a separate trial pending for your father's death. I nodded, looking at the family photo on my desk. It was taken years ago, before Victoria's greed had poisoned everything. Sometimes I wondered if I could have seen it coming, if there were signs I'd missed. But then I remembered something else our father used to say. A doctor's job isn't to dwell on what went wrong. It's to heal what's broken and prevent it from breaking again. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Chen. Just heard about the plea deal. You okay? I smiled, typing back, better than okay. The practice is thriving. We're opening a new clinic next month. Free healthcare for low-income families. Dad would have loved it. Victoria had tried to destroy me using our family's fortune and influence. Instead, she'd only proved what I'd known all along, that true success isn't measured in dollars or power, but in lives touched and people helped. As I prepared for my next patient, I glanced at my restored medical license hanging on the wall. Victoria had thought money could buy anything: reputation, loyalty, even justice. But she'd forgotten the most important lesson our father had taught us. The truth, like a patient's symptoms, always reveals itself to those trained to look for it. And I had been trained by the best.